Makai Lemon was a full participant back at practice yesterday. And while this is a massive step forward and a huge green flag, his injury history, the recurrent injury history that this young man has, for me, as a clinician, as a doctor in my field, does give me cause to pause. See, Makai Lemon has had a hamstring injury and has missed practice since August 3rd, which has been damn near 3 weeks ago. The thing that really should be concerning Eagle fans, though, is that this is the exact same hamstring strain that hobbled him in minicamp. Now, statistically, according to medical literature, 33 to 50% of recurrent hamstring strains happen within 2 to 4 weeks of a full return to sport. Here's the other thing. Because he has a documented history of recurrent hamstring strains and a re-aggravation of that same muscle group, he is more than likely to have a reoccurring injury 5 times that of an athlete who has had no history at all of an injury concern. The fact that this first-round rookie has had an injury history like this, and he hasn't even taken an NFL snap yet, raises concerns for me and raises my medical antenna. And because of that, it gives me cause to pause. I'm Asabadi of the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast, and today we are going to be talking about how Makai Lemon's injury history could be a deterrent and an obstruction for the Eagles offense, at least for the early part of the season, along with Jalen Hurts. And also, we're going to talk about the consensus of this quarterback discussion here for the backup quarterback position with Andy Dalton, whether or not people believe he should be cut, and how I believe Andy Dalton's presence in the quarterback room is not necessarily just about how he executes on the field, but how much value he actually brings to the rest of the guys in that quarterback room. Hit like, hit subscribe, and let's get on with the show. Okay, let's dive deeper a little bit into what this injury actually means for us on the football field. The Philadelphia Eagles and the coaching staff for Makai Lemon have been stressing that he's been getting mental reps on the sideline. And while that actually is a good thing in terms of being able to learn the playbook, the terminology, and understand how to navigate an NFL field, there's really only one way to learn and replicate that, and that is by physical live reps. And with Jalen Hurts, he's already a quarterback that's very reliant on the fact that he has to trust you and has to build chemistry with you. Because he doesn't have the greatest arm, he needs to know where you are on the field. And with the new installation of this offense, with the Sean Mannion scheme, that's very, very reliant on things like timing, that's reliant on precision, accuracy, anticipation. Not having live reps is a detriment to the offense. Jalen Hurts, if he doesn't know where you're going to be in and out of your cuts, how you break off your cuts. Do you slow down? Do you speed up? Do you round the top of your route? Do you do a hard cut? Do you take an inside shade? Do you take an outside shade against press coverage? Do you tend to sit in the zone, or do you tend to drift when there's an open pocket in the zone? Those are things that you can't replicate with mental reps. Those are things you must have live reps for. And this is something that's been a problem for Jalen Hurts throughout his entire career. Makai Lemon, since he's been sidelined, has not been able to manufacture and develop that trust with Jalen Hurts. And so those live reps ended up going to guys like Elijah Moore, Hollywood Brown, and Darius Cooper. Again, the physical chemistry that this team has to manufacture for Makai Lemon and Jalen Hurts cannot be manufactured overnight. And remind you, he's here to replace the production of what A.J. Brown brought, or at least supplement the production to replace A.J. Brown. Say what you want about A.J. One thing we knew about him is that he was going to be ready to play. And he was going to be in the right spot, and in most cases, when he's focused, trustworthy. We don't know that about Makai Lemon. Right now, Eagle fans are sitting there, and they're relying on hope. They're relying on projection. They're relying on potential. And that is not something that you want to rely on when you have a team that's on the verge or potentially on the verge of a Super Bowl run, or at least that's anticipated by many fans. Look, because of the lack of reps that he's had, my contention is that Makai Lemon for the 2026 campaign will not be an impactful player for the Philadelphia Eagles early on. You need live reps out there. What say you? Does my contention, does my apprehension about Makai Lemon warrant any sort of criticism? Does it warrant concern? Do you believe I'm on the right track here? Hit like and subscribe and let me know in the comments section down below. The lack of offensive timing seamlessly brings me into the discussion in regards to the backup quarterback battle between Andy Dalton and Tanner McKee. Now, after preseason 2 against the New England Patriots, the general consensus among Eagle fans is that Tanner McKee is the backup quarterback and the battle's officially over. Tanner McKee went 16 for 22 and threw 2 touchdowns and operated the short passing game offense with fantastic poise, as compared to Andy Dalton, who, just to put it kindly, looked geriatric at times running this offense. Now, while Tanner McKee is and looks like the superior passer of the football right now, people are sitting there on Twitter and on YouTube and they're talking about how you need to flat out get rid of Andy Dalton, Howie Roseman. Leave the room for Tanner McKee and Cole Payton to be there because we need the best guys in the room right now. And I would just say, based on preseason reps and live action tape that you've seen, you might be right. However, I'm going to ask Eagle fans to just pump the brakes on the concept of cutting Andy Dalton really quickly, because that would bring a lot more turmoil and damage to the quarterback room, particularly in this offense, than I think meets the eye. You see, to understand why Andy Dalton is getting the amount of reps that he's doing, you have to know how NFL locker rooms and NFL organizations view the quarterback room. See, former NFL coaches and offensive coordinators in this league would tell you that a quarterback room, the quarterback backup room, is a sacred environment. It's a very, very important ecosystem that helps you over the course of a 17-game season. And having a veteran like Andy Dalton, who's been in several games, in playoff games, in big moment, high leverage situations, and have seen all of the shell coverages, all the types of defenses that you have needed to know for the past 10 years, is inherently valuable. It's not necessarily about whether or not, Andy Dalton could step in as quarterback 2 and win you 7 games if Jalen Hurts is out for, 10 or 11 games. That's not what that's about. That's what Tanner McKee's for. What this is about is having a veteran presence in the locker room to bounce ideas off of. As I mentioned before, Andy Dalton has seen it all at the quarterback position and has played in variants of this West Coast style offense throughout his entire career. Let me put it to you this way. Take a look at what the Carolina Panthers did with Andy Dalton with Bryce Young. Did you see the massive step forward that Bryce Young took once Andy Dalton was in the building? Prior to Andy Dalton taking the field in Carolina, Bryce Young was considered a bona fide bust, to the point where everyone thought it was disappointing, where they didn't even want him on the field. Andy Dalton steps in, showed you a visual representation of what operating an offense looks like. And once Andy Dalton gave the reins, or got hurt and the reins were given back to Bryce Young, the improvement was significant. His footwork got better. His processing, pre-snap processing, got better. That's the value that Andy Dalton brings. He gave you a visual representation of what a professional is supposed to do when operating this offense. That is worth the price of admission. You see, Andy Dalton is not only just a guy to step in and take over for a game or two. He's a de facto coach on the sideline for Jalen Hurts. So when Jalen Hurts gets to the sideline on a drive in week 5 of the regular season, and he sees a complex look that he hasn't seen and doesn't know how to maybe, navigate it in real time, Andy Dalton is the guy. You're not looking at Tanner McKee. You're not looking at Cole Payton. You're looking at Andy Dalton, and you're saying, hey, they're playing this type of shell disguised as this kind of defense. How would you go through this progression? When would you throw the ball here? Would you pump fake here? Would you do this? Would you look right to left? Would you look left to right? Like, how would you operate in this scenario? And Andy Dalton can give you tangible advice because he's a player. Even in training camp, even in the preseason game, we look at it and we're like, why do we keep giving this guy reps? It's because, as I mentioned before, he's a de facto coach. And Andy Dalton is not only just a buffer for complex defenses and Jalen Hurts, but he's a buffer and he's a guy, a medium for Sirianni, for Sean Mannion, for Parks Frazier to communicate with the rest of the quarterback room. When there's a concept that maybe the players are not understanding in real time, Andy Dalton is the guy that can translate that complex language into something digestible for the rest of the quarterback room. And as I mentioned before, that is more valuable than the live preseason reps that Andy Dalton doesn't need. So look, Andy Dalton for this Philadelphia Eagles football team is more valuable than just preseason reps. It's not a matter of whether or not he could throw the ball 20 yards compared to Tanner McKee. We know Tanner McKee's got a better arm. We know Tanner McKee's an overall better quarterback in terms of physical attributes right now. But in terms of processing, understanding, making adjustments in game, outside of Jalen Hurts, nobody in that quarterback room can do that better than Andy Dalton. So no, I ask Eagle fans, don't just sit there and say, cut Andy Dalton, get rid of him. He doesn't belong in the quarterback room. Andy Dalton has much more value than actually meets the eye. Does that actually change the perception of Andy Dalton to you? And if it does, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit thumbs up if it does, and share this with somebody who you think needs to hear why you need to keep Andy Dalton going forward. Okay, so some of the macros from this episode in regards to Makai Lemon and Andy Dalton are as follows. Makai Lemon being injured all throughout minicamp and in big parts of training camp is going to mean a slow ride for Makai Lemon in terms of being an impact player for the 2026 campaign. And because of that, this offense is going to require a lot of patience by Eagle fans and maybe a temperament of expectations as the season goes on. This is going to be an offense that's really predicated on Devontae Smith, Dontavian Wicks, and a lot of check down and screen designs for a guy like Saquon Barkley to supplement the production. You're not going to see a lot of Makai Lemon early on. Another thing about this offense is that you're going to have to see as many hands on deck to help Jalen Hurts process this offense as the season goes on. With Sean Mannion's new terminology and the integration of a new scheme, having guys like Andy Dalton in the quarterback room, not necessarily as a guy who is justified as the 53rd man on the roster or the backup quarterback when Jalen Hurts goes down, it's really more so having a de facto coach on the sideline to help him navigate a very, very marathon-like season with a new offense like this. So trying to dismiss Andy Dalton and getting him to be cut so early on in the process, I think it's short-sighted. What say you, ladies and gentlemen? Before we head out, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you believe that there are concerns Makai Lemon and his hamstring injury should be having in regards to the 2026 campaign? Am I tripping, or are you saying, hey, brother, calm down, he's going to be just fine? The other thing is, do you believe Andy Dalton's justification, or my justification, for keeping him on the roster is worth saving a 53-man roster spot for a guy who looks like a geriatric patient throwing the football? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and on your way out, do me a favor, hit like and subscribe so that you can lock in with me all season long. Thank you so much for watching the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you back here next time. Take care of yourself.